The Arabic name is Timsah al-Gharb al-Afriqi, and the Moroccan Berber name or the Moroccan Amazigh name of the crocodile is Arouchef. It was previously classified as a subspecies of Crocodilius niloticus before eliminating to a species status based on genetic evidence. And it's a more smaller species, and based on some observation that I did at Croco Park, and also based on the original description, I find that there is some differences in the head, in which the head of Crocodilius group, as said in the figure, with a sister relationship to Crocodilus johnsoni in Australia, which support the separation between Succus and Niloticus. For the distribution, I am not going into details because Brito already talked about that in his presentation. So briefly, this species is known from the sub-Saharan, the West Sub-Saharan African countries and Mauritania. And unfortunately, we lost them in Morocco since 1915 to 1917, which their last distribution area was in the Lau Valley Draa, which they known from Geltaz and Wet. So, we are talking about a reintroduction process. For me, I would be happy if this species come back to Morocco, especially in Touizgui, Gelta, which is the acclimatization station. You will visit this station in the field trip, and it's a very interesting place. In this place, there are very interesting diversity of mammals, birds, and also amphibians. For me, I never saw a very high diversity of Pelophylax saharicus in any other places in Morocco, more than this place. So I hope that crocodiles will like that. So for the behavior monitoring, there are many methods in which we used zoomometer and the accelerometers. For the accelerometers, we should first capture the animals, attach it to accelerometers, and after that, we should download data. And for zoomonitors, you should firstly define the behaviors, and you should observe animals and select the observed behaviors. And for the GUALs, it's to monitor animal adaptation to semi-captivity condition, and also to see the influence of gender and abiotic factors and also biotic factors in the behavior, like me standing in the viewing glass watching the crocodiles all the day. So that's an influence too. So about the methodology. The first step is animal capture, which is the more hard one. So we needed 5 months to cap them in the water. And the second one is the security, especially animal security. And we take some morphometric measurements like total length, SVL, and the dimensionment of the head. And once the animals are dried, we attached the accelerometers, and we kept the animals until the glue, we used a resin glue, until they comes dried, and we released the animals. So we tried in one of the crocodiles, we attached 2 accelerometers, one in the neck, like in the photo there, and one in the back, just to examine which method is the best. But unfortunately, after 1 month, the accelerometer that was attached to the back was detached from the crocodiles. And also the crocodiles were succeed, and there is Michel showing how to do that. And the crocodiles are kept in a 30 multiple 12 meters points in Marrakech at La Perle aux Oiseaux in a semi-captivity, and they were exposed to natural environmental condition. The behavior monitoring was conducted using zoomonitors with sessions of 30 minutes were repeated 2 to 10 times, depending on the weather, over 2 to 3 days each month, from November 2025 to February 2026. And we named the crocodiles. The male was named Selim, after the boss of La Perle, and the female was named Jad, after a technician that is working with Selim. And Selim is shorter than Jad, with a total body length of 1.16 m and an SVL of 59, and the female was about 1.24 m and 62 centimeters in the SVL. So about the results, we find that Jad is more active than Selim. I'm talking about the crocodiles, not the humans. So Jad exhibit approximately 1.5 to 2 higher activity than Selim, as showed in the figures. And to discuss each figures for the behavior frequency, we find that dominant behaviors are basking and terrestrial locomotion for both Selim and Jad, which they represent together over than 50% of the total behaviors. For resting and aquatic behaviors, we each contribute around 10 to 20%. And some rare behaviors like feeding, digging, they represent less than 5% of the observations. So for the daily activity patterns, we find that the peak of the activity as shown in the figure is around 15 o'clock, which activity levels were more than 5 times higher for Jad, more higher than the morning periods. And for Selim, it was 2 times higher than the morning activity, but with a nearly similar activity around 17 o'clock. So, as a conclusion, this monitoring shows that these 2 crocodile individuals are influenced by environmental temperature, which the activity peak was around 15 o'clock, and the average of temperature like in November was approximately 23 to 25. In the morning and at night, and also during the rainy days, we observed that the crocodiles spend their time in the shelter under the infrared lamp or underwater, so they are out of sight. So that's all. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Mohammed, for good lecture and good humor and keeping in time. We have heard Lauren Augustine before. Now we hear Lauren from St. Augustine. Lauren Cashman, she's the collection manager at St. Augustine Alligator Farm, and as collection manager there you are busy because it has a really large crocodilian collection. And she speaks about the effects of incubation medium on the eggshell thickness of American alligators, which shows that the huge potential we have in zoos for research in our collections for the scientific community. Please.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here and having me speak. Again, my name is Lauren Cashman from the St. Augustine Alligator Farm. I'm talking today about the effects of incubation medium on American alligator eggshell thickness. This is a combined study with our facility and with help from West Liberty University. So a big question we always get is, does incubation substrate impact health and hatching success? Pretty much anybody that has incubated eggs, hatched eggs, probably has a preference, opinion, will talk your ear off about what they prefer. So there was a note published about substrate usage with Rombifer eggs and that the babies hatched out bigger and stronger. So we decided to take it a step farther to see if there's actually an answer to this. So it is widely believed that neutral or basic pH would cause late-term asphyxiation that Ferguson published in 1981, and we just kind of wanted to see what would happen. So at the St. Augustine Alligator Farm, we do have 24 living species of crocodilians there. We decided to focus on American alligators. One, we have a lot of them there. We're in their native range, so it's a little bit easier. And every year we would get tons of eggs, and didn't necessarily need to hatch them, so it made it a little bit easier to choose this animal for this experiment. So again, this is American alligators, not any of the other species of crocodilians. So for this study, we decided to use 3 different mediums that we had historically used at our facility. We're very confident in using them, used them for many, many, many years, so I was very familiar and comfortable with it. We used vermiculite with 1-to-1 water, and then we used vermiculite 1-to-1 with water, that's weight, with damp sphagnum moss. And then the third one is the Sims container, which is no water, that's a suspended incubation medium method. And what we did is we looked for very fresh clutches. We were trying to find ones that were within 5 days of being laid. Again, a lot of alligators, so this actually, we thought it was going to be really easy to do. It was a bit more difficult than we thought. We needed a minimum of 28 eggs for this, preferably 36 eggs that were developing, not cracked, anything. They needed to be perfect developing eggs. So when we found them, we did all the measurements that we normally take. So we were doing length, width, weight. We excluded anything that was cracked and non-developing because we're wanting to watch what happens during the whole process. And the rest were, so once we did all of that, they were randomly divided into the 3 substrates. We used this type of incubator. We used just one incubator to make sure that the temperature was pretty accurate. And we divided, each shelf had a different medium, so that way we made sure the temperature was pretty accurate within each shelf. And we incubated them at 29 degrees Celsius, which would give us females, which was actually something we needed to do at our facility, so it made it just a little bit easier. And we did this over 2 seasons. Each season had 3 clutches. However, the second season, we decided to throw a 4th one in there just to give us a little bit of a larger sample size. And throughout the process, we pulled eggs at 5 different stages. And they are humanely euthanized following the AVMA guidelines for euthanasia of eggs. So the 5 stages we kind of chose was based on Ferguson paper, reproductive biology, and embryology of crocodilians. So just kind of throughout the whole process, we wanted to see if there's actually a thinness happening throughout the entire process, not just one at the front and one at the end. And what we used for measuring the shells was a Starlet digital screw thread micrometer, and that measured to the 0.001 millimeters. So very, very small. We did 6 measurements on intact eggs at each stage and 9 measurements on ones that had either hatched or shattered. Once we hit stage 4 and 5, which was towards the end of incubation, it got a little harder to have whole shells, so we decided to increase our sample size with those fragments. So overall, this is kind of what we saw at the end. See some ups and downs, a little bit of wonkiness there. So that's just a fun graph because everyone loves graphs. So analyzing the results, this is kind of another snapshot of between the different stages. The stage 1 average for the thickness was 0.430 millimeters, and there was no statistical difference between the shells, and all groups exhibited noticeable reduction in eggshell thickness as incubation progressed. So there was initial loss between stages 1 and 2. There was almost no to minimal loss between stages 2 and 4, and then at stage 4 and 5, we saw significant loss. So there was a statistically significant difference between the Sims and vermiculite and sphagnum at stage 5. But that's about it. So here's a little violin plot. So it looks like there's a huge difference, but again, when you're looking at that, that's millimeters. So that's it averages from 0.32 millimeters to 0.44 millimeters. But there was a little bit of a difference there. But overall, the conclusion, beside from stage 5, there was no other statistically significant differences in thicknesses across the stages. This was obviously an unexpected result for all of us. We were expecting there to be one that really showcased that there was this process and it was really helping degrade the shell. So it would make sense that they would need something like that since it would dissolve material that is primarily made from calcium carbonate, but there wasn't. But that did open up a lot of other questions for us, and one other thing that we did see was that there is a difference in the thickness between the clutches. So different females were offering up eggs of kind of different sizes, different thicknesses. So going from there, it kind of opens up the question for reproduction issues, the ages, size classes. It's just, there's a lot more to it that we're now looking into. But you also take into consideration that incubation mediums may affect other aspects. So if you're having your eggs crammed around by stuff, it may actually cause the temperature to rise just enough that would make the sex ratio change or the amount of time to be a lot shorter. So other things we take into consideration too is that some mediums aren't environmentally friendly. When we started this process, this was quite a few years ago, we were using sphagnum moss. Since then, we've learned that that is not really a sustainable thing to be using. So we are now looking into other avenues if that is actually what we want to use. Otherwise, again, female reproductive health is actually what is coming out of this that we are now looking into, because since we have started working on this, we've actually seen a decrease in reproductive health with our females. So for a while, we're getting very good eggs. Like I said, this study, it actually proved to be a little bit more difficult to get the eggs that we needed because we started seeing a decrease in laying from our females. So it actually, starting this one opened up a lot of doors and avenues for other projects that we want to look into, but makes life a little bit easier for people that want to incubate, that there isn't necessarily, again, for American alligators, that there isn't necessarily anything that you have to use. Anything will pretty much work for you. So I want to give special thanks to Lauren Augustine from her note that actually jump-started this whole process, and to Dr. Ken Vliet, who couldn't be here, and then everybody at the Alligator Farm and West Liberty University. This was a very long study in the making, a lot of numbers to look at, but again, not exactly the results we were expecting, but at least it kind of gives an answer and opens up to many other avenues and things that we can look into. So thank you so much.
Thank you for this lecture. You would have another 2 minutes if you want. But we can move on to the next lecture, which is Charlotte Lation from the Crocosaurus Cove. She's the Animals and Operations Manager there in the Crocosaurus Cove in Darwin. So all of us who attended the last CSG in Darwin probably remember, especially the, how is it called, Cage of Death. So she's talking today about the palliative care of a large captive saltwater crocodile, Crocodilus porosus.
Hello everyone. So as we've said, I'm Charlotte from Crocosaurus Cove in Darwin, and I'm here with a bit of a case study about a very special animal that I had the privilege to work alongside in his golden years. So as we mentioned, we did host the last CSG conference, and we actually did discuss this animal at that conference as well. I'm here with a little bit of a plot twist to what we discussed initially. So some of you may recognise him from that. Some of you may also recognise the animal for slightly different reasons. So our animal, Bert, initially came into captivity because he was harassing barramundi fishermen in the early 80s. He failed miserably as a breeding animal on a crocodile farm. He had a brief but career-defining appearance in the Australian movie Crocodile Dundee, and then came to Crocosaurus Cove with us, where he was a true superstar We educate people about the wildlife that we literally find on our doorstep, and animals such as Bert play a vital role in this. Slight tone change, I'm sorry. Towards the end of 2021, Bert presented with a flaky toenail. So technically we say irregular keratinization of the claw of the first digit of the left hind limb. But for this discussion, I really just want to emphasize that this started off as a flaky toenail. Progression was rapid, antibiotics were unsuccessful, so the toe was surgically removed, obviously providing Bert with relief, and it provided us with the means to investigate what was going on. So histopathology revealed squamous cell carcinoma with ulceration and opportunistic infection, so it's pretty nasty. Throughout this whole process that I'm going to talk about today, consistency and routine were really important in Bert's care, and this surgery was successful, and after the surgery he recovered and was back to normal operations the next day. So we were quite happy with that. Unfortunately, prognosis was a high probability of rapid recurrence, and this happened a lot quicker than we hoped. So our next step was to conduct another surgery. Our second surgery, we amputated through Bert's femur. Reasoning behind this was because we had limited diagnostic and treatment options. We also were a bit concerned about the risks of continuously capturing and restraining a large saltwater crocodile, so we didn't want to keep chopping bits off our crocodile effectively as this condition progressed. The whole limb was submitted for pathology, and Bert resumed normal behaviours within 3 days, bar a couple of initial balance lessons. Histologically, neoplastic cells were noted in the lymphatics near the main mass, but with no evidence further up the limb, we were quite optimistic at this stage. And I think this is where we got to with the last conference. So fast forward to June 24, Bert was noted to refuse food for a week. This correlated with the onset of a cooler weather, and when we typically see a decline in activity. However, disinterest was quite unusual, particularly because this animal was very consistent and generally quite predictable. So we started asking questions. What are we seeing here? Old age or maybe something more sinister? We engaged veterinary and crocodilian expert advice, but with no evidence and no other kind of symptoms, we had no clear answers. So this started a roller coaster of behaviours. I use the term roller coaster as opposed to decline because we never actually really saw a decline in this animal. He was very up and down, and food motivation, keeper engagement, and willingness to participate were our main noteworthy factors here. He did maintain a body score of 3 throughout, which we know is very important, and we maintained open communication streams, so we debated steps and scenarios, and ultimately what was best for Bert in every scenario that we came up with. Little did we realise at this stage we were enacting a palliative care plan. And as you can see on the screen, one of our initial steps was to install a patio heater in his enclosure. Now, Bert lives in his natural range. He had multiple basking and submerging opportunities, but we wanted to essentially see if he'd use it, if it would have an effect, and we did believe that it did have a positive effect on his behaviours. Feeding and diet were a huge contributing factor in our management plan as well. So we saw differences in food motivation at different times of day, with different keepers, and regarding different food items. So a big behavioural change was that Bert would show enthusiasm in receiving food, and then he'd sit with it in his mouth for up to an hour. He'd chew on it, and he'd ultimately spit it out. So the right-hand image is what you can displaying this. So there's all feathers and bits of chicken all through his pen. So this behaviour persisted with what we deemed low-value food items. Preferred foods we deemed high-value food items, and he was really specific with these. So, for example, barramundi fish was a favourite. Anecdotally, it was actually barramundi fishermen that got him in trouble in the first place in the wild, although he showed a very distinct preference for human-grade, supermarket-bought baby barramundi, which was quite typical of Bert's personality. And we put hypotheses around this food suspicion. One of which was we were hiding a lot of supplements and antibiotics and things like that through his food, but over time we disregarded this idea. We did kind of play with what we were putting in his food though. Ultimately, we settled on a human multivitamin, which was very suitable for a gentleman of Bert's age. So it's the Novus 50 Plus from the chemist. Much of his plan was individualised to the animal and what we know. So what did we know? This image is actually taken 10 years ago, and it's myself and my husband working with Bert. So we've got strong first-hand knowledge of normal behaviours here. With our animals, we interact multiple times a day. All of this is recorded, and we've got many, many years of data. It's blurry on the screen, but this graph went back to 2015, so I thought that was pretty impressive. Good baseline observations of what's normal, and this is why we initially picked up on a flaky toenail. We also benefited from significant investment in professional expertise. So Crocco's relationship with our contractors predates me. Sally, from the Centre for Crocodile Research, conducts quarterly health assessments on our crocodiles, meaning she's very familiar with our animals, probably more than she ever thought she would be. And her, together with our vet Stephen, played a critical role in our decision making. This collaborative approach allowed us to combine on-site behavioural observations with broader professional insight, providing Bert with a well-rounded, responsive and highly capable team, I think. Despite this, Bert sank to the bottom of his pen at 5 p.m. on Sunday, 23rd of December 24, and didn't resurface. Cause of death was deemed cardiac failure and terminal drowning. What was really interesting was the cause of this cardiac failure. So during post-mortem, everything appeared fairly typical. When we cut into his heart, this is what we met. So this is obviously not right. So what we're seeing here is chronic myocardial fibrosis due to the squamous cell carcinoma metastasizing. And that was the cause of his heart failure. So we'd enacted this care plan, many facets, but realistically, diagnosing the true cause of this behaviour would have presented many challenges, and there was no coming back from that. So why bother? Bert was an animal on public display, so every step we took had to be carefully considered. This became very clear at the time of his death, which made news across the globe. One of our biggest realisations was how many people felt connected to this animal. There was a genuine outpouring of sentiment, with people sharing their personal stories and experiences with him across our platforms, and even via post. We live alongside 100,000 saltwater crocodiles in the Northern Territory. They're a huge part of our identity, our tourism, and our economy. As many of you know, our relationship hasn't always been positive. As a zookeeper, one of my main goals is education. Whoopsie. So I want to build a connection with our animals, and showing their complexity and their capability and their value, and kind of trying to move people away from the whole man-eating idea that they have about our saltwater crocodile. Bert did this by himself, and it was genuinely humbling to see this interaction and this care that the general public had for this animal firsthand. We're so incredibly grateful to the resources we had available to us during Bert's end-of-life care, and continuing with our other crocs. I'm personally grateful to Crocco's CEO and directors for allowing the level of care and resources we put into this animal, and then our industry experts, as I mentioned. We are not just clients. These are the 6 p.m. on a Sunday phone calls and the 5 a.m. on Christmas Eve action plans, Exhibit A. And this animal himself, who's a movie star, a croc safety education ambassador, an entertainer, to be a mentor, a stubborn old man, and now a science subject. It was an honour to work with such a charismatic and impactful animal, and it's been an honour sharing that story with you today. Thank you.
Thank you for this interesting lecture. We stay in Australia and we stay with the species, with Crocodilus porosis, just get bigger in size with Cassius. And I don't need to introduce you to the next speaker, you well know her. She told me it's now her 4th lecture, and she also told me it's the one with most fun. So Sally Isberg, presenting on Cassius, a large male saltwater crocodile. Please, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Yeah, when I say fun one, I mean, you know, I don't have to worry so much about the scientific integrity of this one because it's a story, but of course it's also a bit of a sad story. It's, you know, thank you for you know, putting the program as Bert's story and then Cassius's story. Obviously, a lot of our animals in the zoo environment are getting older, and managing that age and what does an old age care plan look like for crocodiles. And as Charlotte says, you know, these big iconic animals, they have a connection with the community, and we need to handle that in a very delicate way. I do want to point out that the 50-plus Synovus that they fed Bert, Charlotte's just reminded me I'm 49, so next year I can start taking it. So I'm not sure where that's going. Maybe it's about me aging as well. So today I want to share with you a story around Cassius. He needs little introduction to many of you, but what was a bit of a surprise was the story that he was carrying along with him. I just want to point out here that there's a whole heap of collaborators on this, and particularly point out George Craig, who subsequently passed away after a few days after Cassius. So a bit of a background and story. Cassius is a male saltwater crocodile. He was captured by Graham Webb and Charlie Manolis and the team in September 1984 on the Finnis River in the Northern Territory. He was 5.1 metres at the time, and he was carrying quite a few war wounds. He was missing his front left leg above the elbow. He had a deformed snout and nasal disc, which I'll show you in the next slide. He was missing his tail tip, so Graham's done all the mathematical adjustments to what the overall size would have been, but I'm just sticking to what the facts were on the measuring tape. And he also had scars adjacent to his ribs 3 and 5 on the left-hand side, and that's actually going to become a significant point as we go through this story. He was, based on the number of injuries he had, like he obviously had some conflict with other animals or another animal at some point in time. And we know there was another big animal in this river system because Sweetheart, another 5.1 metre animal, had been removed a couple of years previously. We estimated at the time, just conservatively, that he was probably 40 years old. He had a little bit of a detour on getting to Green Island, which is off the coast of Queensland, and to where he then resided from April 1987. And the reason that many of us know him is that he entered the Guinness World Book of Records for the largest crocodile in captivity in January 2011, and then was bumped off that record list for a little bit by Lolong until his passing, where he re-entered the Guinness World Record holding until he passed away on the 1st of November 2024, whereby he was measured 5 metres and 55 centimetres. As I mentioned, he had a pretty messed up jaw and nasal disc from the conflicts that he'd had prior to bringing into captivity. One thing I should have mentioned, though, is despite all of those injuries at the time of his, noted at the time of his capture, all the wounds were well healed. There was no sign of infection. There was no external reason, other than knowing that crocodiles can lose limbs and that, to suspect that anything was underneath. He was maintained on Green Island under our Code of Practice Guidelines for crocodiles in captivities. He was, again, a very charismatic character. He was, lots of environmental enrichment, lots of training aids, just a very interactive crocodile overall. I started working with Green Island in 2022, so I was lucky enough to visit him probably 4 or 5 times over that period. And then on my last visit, I noted this, that he was sort of laying in his pen, what we termed bloating to the left-hand side. Now, it was noted by some staff in a previous visit of mine that he was observed like this. But then later on in my visit, he swam over to us. He was nicely even keel. So we just hypothesised that because he was missing a leg, this side was maybe a little bit heavier. And, you know, like, I know we make this stuff up, right? We work with hypotheses. So at the time of my last visit, he was eating normally. As I said, he was bright, alert, but 17 days later, after not eating for about a week, he passed away on the 1st of November. He was put into the freezer until I could get there on the 3rd of November. A flurry of phone calls between Graham Webb and Kathy Shelton and myself just to, occurred just so I could make sure I was collecting the right samples. Graham particularly was interested in Cassius's heart and doing some work on that later, so very specific instructions about what we wanted to achieve. But fundamentally, the samples taken were fixed and frozen tissue for later pathology. So I just did a systematic necropsy on him. You know, thyroids look normal. There's me injecting formalin into the heart after tying it off as per Graham's instructions. The liver looked a little bit weird in colour. Again, he'd gone into the freezer. There were bits that were probably not, ideal in terms of, looking at it because of being slightly frozen. He did have evidence of fatty liver though. That's quite common in captive animals. He had a huge fat body despite being in a body score of 3. We talked about the other day that that's one of the fat storing mechanisms, lots of mesenteric fat around his intestines. Testes, he was still reproductively active at the time. There was spermatozoa found in there. Kidneys appeared normal. This is where the story starts to get a bit interesting. The spleen just had these little areas on it, and I had not experienced that before. Later, Kathy said to me, yeah, that was probably, the sign of the bacterial infection, and sure enough, it cultured up Morganella and Erococcus, and that'll come into the story in a few minutes. His right lung was long and elongated. It was full of air. It was normal looking tissue. But the left-hand lung is where the story begins. What we found was lots of fibrous tissue that was encasing a fibrosis. So you can see here in my hands all the caseous material that I was able to get out of it. A good sort of, 250 to 350 grams of material. And it was all basically sitting up here within his rib cage near his left lung. When we removed all the organs, you can actually see these photos. Sorry, this one here makes me sick when I'm looking at it because it's upside down. But you can see here, obviously the animal, the carcass is in dorsal recumbency, but you can see here the right hand width of the rib cage is smaller than the left hand width. There is a slight bias because of the way the carcass is tilting, but nonetheless it is real. It probably just looks a little bit more on the picture. So when we come back to this picture here was taken on the day of his capture. He was pulled into a road train, and again this picture is slightly biased because he's curved towards us, but you can actually see that there is his rib cage on that side is enlarged compared to the one on the right. And this is him on the barge on the way to Green Island, and unfortunately, again, it's not clear, but when you sort of blow it up on a computer screen, there is actually an elongation in there that you can see. So putting this all together, cool. I'm going to claim the other Lauren's 2 minutes too. No, I'm only joking. I'm on my last slide. So putting this all together, what appears like it looked like it happened is that we know in the past he's been in conflict. An infection has gotten inside his rib cage next to the left lung and formed a fibrosis. Now, Fritz Hutschemeyer and I'm not sure of Cooper's first name, my apologies, but Fritz we all knew and love, they defined a fibrosis as a reptile equivalent of an abscess. And what happens there is that reptiles have this ability to encase an infection in a thick fibrous tissue and basically withhold that infection in place. You know, practically, we took an animal out of the wild, everything appeared healed. If we were going to start looking for this kind of stuff, we're going to need X-rays, MRIs and CT scans. Not sure how many of those exist to cater for a 5.1 metre animal, you know, logistically as well as physically, like their availability. And then of course you've got to have the diagnostician that's there to able to actually make sense of whatever they're seeing. Even if we did know what was there, fibrosis are impermeable to antimicrobial therapy, so that wouldn't have, like feeding him antibiotics wouldn't have worked. We could have done surgery. That would have been a really traumatic surgery to get inside the rib cage, and if you do not get everything out, it regrows. So that would have been a lot of trauma to put the animal through. We'd also need to do a huge post-operative care procedure and plan around that, and you know, we've got to think about the animal here as well. So fundamentally, even if we knew that this fibrosis was in Cassius, we would have managed it the same way. We would have kept records of his feeding, kept him at ideal temperatures, kept notes on his behaviour, noted any changes, and as we do anyway, make sure that the animals are as comfortable as possible. So I think this is a bit significant just from the perspective that he was in captivity for 40 years. So I said when he was pulled out of the wild, he was conservatively 40 years. He was in captivity for 40 years. So we've got an 80-year-old animal. That's a long period for an animal to be known to carry such an infection. Ultimately, we believe that old age just started breaking down the fibrous casing that then allowed the infection to get out, and therefore the eventual cause of death was bacterial septicemia. So it was nice to, I guess, finally put together the story of this you know, revered and long-lived animal, and again, he's going to live in the scientific literature now as a case study of a long-lived fibrosis. This was the last photo I took of him, and basically that's how he was looking at me when I was checking out another crocodile. I turned around and he was like, "Why aren't you here with me?" So he was, yeah, full of personality. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Sally, for this lecture. And we move to the final lecture. Normally in the program, it stands that Nick Whittaker would talk about moving 850 crocodiles, but I'm afraid Nick is not here and withdraw the lecture in last minute, so I hope we will hear it in 2 years' time. But the program committee found a replacement, which is Savannah Boan. And when I asked her how I shall introduce her, she told me that I simply should say that people at Gatorland are the most awesome people in the entire world. She works at Gatorland mainly with social media, and also that's the contents of her lecture, also how this is moved into conservation. So the stage is yours.
Thank you. Hi everyone, it's Friday. Everybody's gonna get up now because I'm super loud. I'm gonna throw that on the floor. So based on what just happened with Lawrence, if I have a glitch in this, because I have a lot of like multimedia things, I'm gonna change and use my flash drive that's in my pocket. So hopefully that doesn't happen, but just in case. All right, so, where we go. My name is Savannah Boan, and I am the Vice President and International Ambassador for Gatorland Global Conservation, and I'm also the Crocodilian Enrichment Coordinator for Gatorland in Orlando, Florida. And my job is amazing, and it takes me to some fantastic places, like here in Morocco with you folks, and also an invite to the Oval Office. But I can't tell you what it was about because it's classified. I spend a lot of my time both in front of and behind a camera sharing animals and the people who work with them and live alongside them through high-impact social media content. And in the last 90 days, that content has reached over 123 million people. In traditional advertising terms, that kind of reach would cost about $1.2 million US. which means cell phone in hand, we at Gatorland Global have created 123 million opportunities to influence how people see crocodilians in just the last 90 days. And when you can influence people at that scale, you don't just shape opinions, you start to change outcomes. But here's the truth. It costs millions of dollars to conserve a species. Governments can help, NGOs can help, but real conservation succeeds because of people. The people that live alongside these animals every single day, the local champions. My work lives right at the intersection of storytelling, wildlife, and communities. Because at the end of the day, they are the ones who will determine the future of crocodilians in their own region. Through social media, we amplify their voices. We turn curiosity into connection, and that connection into long-term support for the people doing the work on the ground. Professor Graham Webb defines conservation as the sum total of actions taken to preserve or maintain something to which we attribute a value. And that matters because people protect what they value and they remove what they don't. So if we want crocodilians to survive, we don't just need more science, we need more value, especially in the eyes of the people living alongside them. At Gatorland in Orlando, Florida, we've been doing that for decades. One guest at a time, one moment at a time, one shift from fear to curiosity. I see it every single day firsthand. And now through social media, that same shift is happening millions of times over. And what we've learned is simple. Interest comes first. Because without interest, there's no engagement. Without engagement, there's no support. And without that support, local champions don't have what they need to succeed. And here's the key. People don't need to understand every detail of crocodilian biology and wildlife management to care. That can come later. Interest is the entry point. Because once something has value, people start to act, even in small ways. And when you multiply those small actions across millions of people, it becomes something much bigger. And that's where Gatorland Global comes in. We take the interest in the 77 years that Gatorland has built, and we direct it where it matters most, towards local champions. Gatorland was founded in 1949 by Owen Godwin, a local champion for Florida, before Walt Disney ever stepped foot in the state of Florida. His vision was simple: show people the real Florida, not just the beaches, but the swamps, the wild places, and the animals that define them. And that mission hasn't changed, but what has changed is the scale. Because social media didn't just expand our audience, it gave us the ability to support conservation far beyond that big gator mouth out front. We went from one-on-one interactions to millions of people around the world. People who may never in their lifetime encounter a crocodilian, but can still influence their future. And that's when something really clicked for us. You guys see the chart? Social media isn't just a marketing tool. It's a value creation tool, a conservation tool, because every video, every story, every moment someone stops scrolling is a chance to increase the perceived value of these animals. And when value goes up, like you see on the chart, support follows. And that's where Gatorland Global was born. Our mission is very simple: to protect, conserve, and educate. And our model is even more simple: find the right people, support them, stand beside them. And this isn't theoretical for us, this is how we operate. Our flagship project began in Cuba, and that's where we met Etienne Perez and Gustavo Sosa, local champions for Cuba working to protect the critically endangered Cuban crocodile. From the outside, you could call it a project, but for us it became family. All from asking one simple question: how can we help? Very, very easy. How can we help? Sometimes that means building a kitchen for the staff, because taking care of people matters just as much as taking care of the animals. Sometimes it means financially investing in the construction of new pools. Sometimes it means being in the field with them. And always it means sharing their work and their stories with the world. And then something incredible happened. People didn't just connect with the crocodiles in Cuba, they connected with Etienne. They connected with Gustavo, with their passion, their dedication, and their reality. And that connection turned into support. And that's how this model was built. We built it together. And it didn't stop in Cuba. In Jamaica, it looks like standing beside Lawrence Enriquez, the local champion, or Crocman, as they call him, at the Holland Bay Crocodile Sanctuary, a remote resource-limited facility funded by Gatorland Global that has become the foundation of a national Head Start program for American crocodiles in Jamaica. And that progress exists because of him, because of one person's commitment and a network of people choosing to stand beside him. Sometimes it looks like supporting people behind conservation by ensuring they have what they need to do their work, whether that's through assisting financially with tuition costs, disaster relief, transportation issues, or flying a vet out for a crocodile tooth extraction. In East Timor, it looks like learning from local champion Tio Miguel and his community in Suailaro, understanding their deep cultural connection to crocodiles and asking one simple question: what do you need and how can we help? Not showing up with a plan, but building a plan together with the community, because that's the difference. And I'd like to be clear about something. The purpose of our social media is not to overshadow science. It's to amplify it, to support the scientists, the communities, and the local leaders doing the work. Because while science is critical, it takes resources and time, and sometimes the results remain within the scientific community. What we can do is make an immediate impression on people and help them understand why it matters. And that can happen in a single moment, a single behavior, a single interaction, like two male alligators competing over a female during breeding season.
Spartans! What is your profession?
In one moment, people understand movement, behavior, and conflict, and that's the bridge. That's how we take something complex and make it accessible, and when people understand, they care and support. Take one alligator, Mr. Worldwide, an 11-foot 3-inch alligator removed from a high-traffic tourist area in Orlando. At a population level, that's insignificant, but as a story, it reached millions of people, and suddenly we're talking about alligator safety, breeding behavior, human-wildlife conflict, and habitat loss. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. But sometimes it's not just about the message, it's about connection. At Gatorland, we have an alligator named Jolene, and she's the most famous alligator in the entire world. She was found in the wild, missing her top jaw, and somehow she survived. And today, she's not just thriving, she's become a global symbol of resilience. Her story has been shared around the world, and honestly, at this point, she is Florida's greatest local champion. I'm just her PR agent. Because of Jolene, we've received letters, messages, videos from people all over the world sharing how her story helped them get through something difficult. She reminded them to never give up. This is how one animal could change an entire person's life, and that's the point. Sometimes it only takes one to create a connection, and that connection can reach further than we've ever imagined. So whether it's Mr. Worldwide sparking conversations about coexistence and losing wild spaces, or Jolene reminding people what resilience really looks like in the wild, every story gives us something bigger, a way to connect. And once that connection is there, we can help direct it where it matters most, to the people on the ground and the local champions. And we've seen that impact go far beyond our own projects. Through social media, Gatorland has partnered with CrocFest on several successful occasions, and this year we've also partnered with Conservation Florida, a land conservancy that works to protect Florida's wild spaces. And I want to be very clear about something, because this is very important to us. Every dollar generated through our social media, including my personal platforms, goes directly into Gatorland Global Conservation projects. 100% of it. We have no administration fees, no overhead, no management, no travel expenses. Gatorland, the park, covers all of that. So when the people support what we're doing, every single dollar goes to the people on the ground who are our our trusted partners. 123 million people didn't find our content on accident. It's because we show them the work, the people, the reality, and the trust. And that's what allows us to turn attention into real, tangible support for local champions around the world. The future of conservation, crocodilian conservation, won't be decided on social media. And it won't be decided in this room today, though we're all hopeful. It will be decided by the people who live alongside these animals every day. The local champions, the ones making hard decisions and doing the work when no one is watching, carrying the responsibility forward for future generations. Our job is to make sure they're not doing it alone, to make sure they have the support, visibility, and resources they need to succeed. Because when you empower local champions, you don't just conserve a species, you build something bigger. A system where conservation can sustain itself long after we're all gone. And if we can do that, not one person at a time, but millions at a time, the future of crocodilian conservation is something we can all believe in. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Savannah. And you can stay here and move over to the chairs because this concludes our session. And I ask all other presenters also to come up on stage for a panel discussion. So are there any questions?
All right, thank you so much for those wonderful presentations. And I just want to take a moment because I know a lot of the zoo people are in this room right now. And I do want to thank a lot of you, including CrocFest, because you guys have really assisted CRC in the beginning to do a lot of research and educational outreach. And hopefully with the question I'm about to ask, you will still want to support us because I might ruffle some feathers. So this is kind of for Lauren. In regards of your presentation. And I'm sorry if I missed something, and please educate me on the, Lauren Augustine, yeah, sorry. So please provide more information. We're discussing right now with the zoos in regards of trying to further the conservation of Crocodilus rhombifer. And I know some of the issues is trying to ensure that in the field that we are continuing the genetic purity of this animal. But understanding a little bit about history and also kind of looking at what's going on in Belize and Mexico with the hybridization between the Morlets and the American crocodile. At what point do we have to say that hybridization is just a natural process and part of the issues with the conservation of Crocodilus rhombifer, trying to keep that genetic purity? We're fighting against nature, and something that we all know is that nature always wins. So at what point do we just have to say, we just gotta let nature take its course? And it's probably not gonna happen in our generation, in our lifetime, where the American crocodile is in a sense gonna hybridize out Crocodilus rhombifer, but at what point do we have to say we're probably putting money into something that we're not going to necessarily be successful in?
Yeah, doesn't ruffle my feathers because I don't make the decisions on how and who is going to be conserving Cuban crocodiles in the field. We are a support network and we try to support the goals of the Cuban biologists. That was brought up in the meeting in 2017, the history of hybridization, and the goal outcomes. And I believe at that time it was desirable to continue to maintain pure Cuban crocodiles within the facility. I think it's also a pride thing, right? That's a Cuban crocodile, it's a Cuban species. I believe Yomel's paper found about 49% of wild crocodiles that he sampled were hybrids. So I think it's a really good point to make. And the talk on the first day about Morleti and Acutus, I think it's very relevant to rhombifer and something that should continue to be on the forefront of efforts for crocodile conservation in Cuba.
More questions? Graham.
Just really two comments. I think having worked in Cuba for 10 years, one of the things in NGOs and others coming to assist, I think you've really got to focus in on the people that are doing it. If there's a real temptation to, you know, assist something through the university or something through someone else, something through that's not connected to what they're doing, and that sets up in Cuba, because things are tight, it sets up like a competition within Cuba, and I've seen that develop disastrous results. So the politics of who you support is going to help make sure, you know, your dollars generate benefits. The other comment I'd just like to make is that in Mark Ferguson's paper, where he hypothesised that the nesting material was essential to break down the shell, you know, it's just not true. You know, we incubate alligator eggs just on a rack, no media, wash them all, and they come through perfectly, you know. There's still the calcium is drawn out and go into the embryo, but it's nothing to do with the nesting media.
The purebred stuff comes in. That's just my thoughts anyway.
Well, and I would add, I think there's no doubt that the Cuban crocodile is an extremely unique species. And so is that something we want to use? And I think there's also no doubt that human activity has exacerbated and sped up hybridization. So what is our role in then kind of slowing it back down to a reasonable rate that maybe a Cuban crocodile would distinguish itself separately? Like, we have to think about those roles as well.
May I add one point also for, to the hybridization? I was working many years with Osteolaemus, and there, as far as I know, no hybrid from the wild was ever detected. So this is also a question what occurs in nature, and all the hybrids in Osteolaemus we detected were captive bred, so artificially done by us. I think there was a question here.
Taurus Cove too, as a way to assess our animal welfare and what that looks like on a you know, intermittent basis. You know, like, it'd be good to get a bit more traction on that. But yeah, definitely they were low levels, but yeah, we did it.
You know, we did some work on Cuban crocodiles, so we have baseline levels across an entire year for both reproductive hormones and court. And so I think that there are going to certainly be species differences, but I would encourage you to look into that. There are some publications using fecal court on crocodilians.
Josh has compiled that literature. He's well over all of that.
Was a question by Patrick?
This is kind of a Cassius and Bert question combined. I emailed you, Sally, when Cassius died about understanding how old he actually is and quantifying that. Have you taken bone histology samples to
I have his femur in my freezer. Like all good croc biologists, I have bits everywhere. Look, I did take his left femur for the purposes of doing growth. So bad, isn't it? Of doing growth ring studies, and yeah, you and I did talk about it. I can't remember the email chain directly. I did speak to Graham about it, because, like, just in terms of, you know, who to send it to, because it's obviously not my area of expertise. Graham then told me that doing bone growth ring studies is not as simple as it seems. The pictures that we see in the publications are the best of the best of the best, and there's hundreds of samples that aren't that go wrong to get those one or two good pictures. The reason that I haven't really continued to pursue it is, so to get the growth rings in a bone, you need the dry wet season contrast of the increased and the decreased food consumption to get the disparities in there. Obviously that would probably be, you know, applicable for these first 40 years. After that, he was on Green Island, which is an island in the barrier reef. The temperatures are stable all year round. There's not the fluctuations. He's in captivity. He's being fed, you know, probably 3, 4, 5 times a week. So do you know what? So there's not that stop, start, stop, start, stop, start. So I am, the owner of the bone, which is not me, is more than willing for someone to do that. I just need to find the expertise. So if you're willing, we can have a chat about it.
Another question here? Yeah.
So my question's for Savannah, and forgive me if this might seem like a bit of an obvious question, but I'm more asking it for those who may be watching the live stream or the recording of this. So as we established the other day for things like, crocodile issues involving people and all that, social media is of course a very powerful weapon for that. And obviously not everybody has the reach that say you and Gatorland Global have to go to places and meet people who are doing this work. But yet almost all of us have social media, and many of us have diverse platforms with different numbers of followers. So what advice would you maybe give to people who want to help using social media, but who don't necessarily have the resources, you and Gatorland have?
So, I talked to, but before I did this talk, I actually talked to Graham about that, because I'm of the opinion that anyone can do the exact same thing that I'm doing. Not maybe without a big park following you, but anyone in here who has a phone can do the same thing. And these can be in areas where crocodiles might be or might not be. But I think consistency is the key to all of that. The youth coming up right now, like little Kelly over there, who's not paying attention, would tell you that they think that it's a very quick process, and it's absolutely not. No one has any idea of how much work goes into every single teeny tiny detail of every single post I put up. Like hours of work for what somebody might look at for 2 to 3 seconds. But all I do is try to increase that watch time. You increase the watch time, they send your stuff to more people. And you just have to find your own personality and your own tribe that's gonna love you for who you are. And I think that a lot of that is being completely transparent with what you're doing and what you're trying to do, and sharing that message with as many people as you can. And like, I've been watching this girl who's a jazz singer, actually, and like a blues singer, and she was cleaning houses. So she would record herself singing while she was cleaning houses. And I watched her incredible metamorphosis, right? From cleaning houses every day, and I don't even know how I found her, to now she's like on tour in the United States. She's probably going to be like the next Amy Winefield. She's absolutely amazing. But she was consistent. She would go to a new house every day, clean house, scrub floors, scrub toilets, all the while she was singing. So everyone has the ability to do it if they have a phone. Obviously, everyone's personalities aren't the same. Some people like me and some people don't, and I'm okay with that, because at the end of the day, I just really am the best PR agent for alligators and crocodiles. And so that's what I try to focus on. But anyone can do the same thing, I believe. Graham doesn't believe that, but I believe that.
We have a question from Kevin.
Also, I guess more of a comment or reiteration, maybe, building off of what Graham said about, well, kind of how difficult it is to work in Cuba. But I just wanted to reiterate, in case I kind of got glanced over in the talk, as someone who was also at that strat planning meeting, that the reason we had that meeting in Cuba and the reason we invited as many Cuban partners as we could is because these are not objectives that we as the AZA SAFE program came up with. Each one of those objectives that Lauren went over was driven and come up with by the Cubans, and our role was really kind of tying into Savannah's talk was, okay, what is our role in helping you do that? Is there a role for us to help and provide support where we can? So yeah, because that's exactly right. We can't do this without the local people, and it's not going to be effective for us to prescribe something that we don't really know that much about. So I just wanted to reiterate that while we were there, that is the process that we took, which was what do you see as the primary issues that you're facing, and is there a way that we can help support you in this project? So that's all I have.
Do we have more? There's one on the other side.
I just want to go off on, or to continue a conversation in regards to the social media with Savannah. Everyone has a phone. We all have a phone. We'll go out in the field. However, a lot of us that are on the boots on the ground, we don't have the time, you just mentioned as well, is like the time to, you put a lot of time into each post and think about it. We don't have that, you know, we're out in the field, we're responding to wildlife calls.
I see you on social media all the time, Marissa. What the hell are you talking about?
No, but it's like, it's not really a lot, but I'm not putting that much time in it. And so, but there's even some people I know that don't even have that much time. So, and what I'm saying though is, from your experience with all the followers, because I mean, I see a lot of us out here and we're not doing that much because we're running the analysis and all that, is what, if there is like one thing that you're like, do this once a week, twice a week, because I know how the social media can really help in getting people to programs and donating. But again, we really don't have that much time. So what could you highlight for us to try to get that following?
I feel like, especially for you in your position, like everyone knows the CRC, like everyone in the United States and obviously everyone in Belize. But in your, like, you have interns come through all the time, right? Find an intern that works in social media, because there are plenty of young people that are doing that everywhere that just loves crocodiles. Like, find someone from Full Sail in Florida that loves alligators and crocodiles, but their skill set is more along the lines of social media, and just have them follow you around all the time. Like, I mean, I'm sure they'd be happy to do it to be able to get close to crocodiles. Like, young people, you know, need direction like that, you know? You could just go to Full Sail, or you could put in something for interns and say, you know, if you're from Florida, maybe you love crocodiles, and have someone do that for you. There are people that love doing that so that you don't have to do it. I hate editing YouTube videos. It's the worst thing in the world for me. And finally, I found someone that absolutely loves reptiles, and so now I don't have to do that anymore. And that's the biggest relief in my life right now. But I mean, you're doing a great job doing it on your own, but if you feel like you need more help, like, I say pull one of those interns and like put them in that direction, or find someone that's already going to school for that also loves crocodiles. Because there's a lot of them out there that could do a really great job, especially in Florida. Because there's a lot of crazies in Florida too. Maybe you can help maybe you can help guide them back in the right way, especially if you catch them when they're young. Because anybody can change if you catch them when they're young. But once they're solid in their, well, I have to do this because this is what gets me likes, once they're solid in that and not changing, they usually don't. Hope that helps. But I mean, you can always call me.
There's so many researchers out here and all that, and so it's like, it's not a question necessarily for me and the CRC, but it was just for everyone.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to say this is one of the best sessions, I think, in the meeting. All of you guys should be congratulated for it. I've enjoyed every one of them. Sally, it was especially good to hear the Cassius story directly from you because of your involvement with that animal. And Savannah, great presentation. I know you guys incorporated and got tax-exempt status within the last couple of years in the United States and Florida. I don't think you mentioned to the group how much money you guys have put into conservation programs since you've done that. Could you share that?
I didn't, but if you go to GatorlandGlobal.org, there is an impact report, and feel free to read it.
So just in relation to the social media stuff again, like, you definitely need to sell conservation for sure and get it out there. Would you worry that at any point you enable people who will be less suited to be interacting with wild animals, to be encouraging them to, you know, interact in a negative way, like in Flavio's talk, where they're drawing, you know, animals up because they've seen it somewhere on YouTube, so they're going to draw an animal up for the tourists, and then inevitably, you know.
So I was thinking about that a lot before we were going into this, because what I wanted to say, and look, I'm just as much guilty at times as other people are. We saw it, and it was, we do this little jumperoo where the little gators can come up and get a fish, right? And I'm watching it, and I'm like, oh, this is cute, whatever. And then at the end, there's a bird standing there, and you see an alligator come in from the side, snatch the bird, and take the bird off, right? I had to watch that video 100 times till I realized it was AI. Because I was trying to figure out when that happened. I was calling employees. I was like, hey, did you see one of those little alligators get a bird the other day? So for the dangerous things, AI is going to destroy that. So all these people that have built these careers on doing dangerous things with dangerous animals, that's all going to go away. And they don't even know yet. Because there's so much AI that's so good that looks exactly like the thing that it's like everyone gets jaded to all of it. It's all going to end. That's just my opinion. I don't have facts to back that up, but I'm just telling you that's going to end.
One more question from here.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to weigh in also on the social media issue. In my country and where I come from, people are attracted to, when you go on the social media, you see sports, for example, soccer, or maybe politics. I'm just thinking, what strategy can we use to get people attracted to conservation, for example, in particular the crocodile? What strategy that we enable people to get interested? Because when you open the phone, it's just soccer or politics or some other social event.
Oh, that's your Google bubble, man. And yours is different. Like, so everything you see on social media is catered to you specifically, right? Everything you see. So clearly, you're stopping at some point on these political stories. So what you can do is go through your system and have them clear the cache out. So now they have no frame of reference for you anymore. And then when you start looking at things and liking things, make sure that it's specific to what you'd like to see involving wildlife, right? So I do that at least once a month. I'll go through and I'll clear every single thing out that I've looked at in the past month from every single platform, which again is a lot of work. But it gives me a clear slate to start over, and then otherwise you just get caught in the same loop over and over. So if yours is a political loop, obviously at some point you read something political or you liked something political, so you can go through and clear that and just change directions on it. Does that make sense? And also feel free, you can email me, I'll give you my card and we could talk about it more at length.
Anybody?
Or you could do that. Where do you live? Because I'll come. Don't throw the invite. Ask Graham. I'll just show up.
Anybody with a last urgent question? Then we come, or Graham? But no talk. Just a question or a comment.
It's just a comment because, you know, one of your most successful animals is one that's had its whole snout ripped off.
Yep.
And conventional wisdom in imagine zoos would be don't show an animal like that to the public. And I'll just add one little story to it, that when we started public education about 1980, going around to every school, every kid in the Northern Territory, to one, tell them how dangerous crocodiles were, two, to let them know they were recovering, and three, to start to interest them in crocs. We used to take round big skulls and open them up and let them feel what it's going to be like if they grab you. But we used to take one of those hatchlings that everyone euthanizes that had spina bifida. His name was Bentley. All the kids just like, they couldn't give a damn about the big skulls, anything. They were just totally wrapped in Bentley. They'd play with him on the floor and he'd be scuffing along sideways. So sometimes in our quest to be purists, we miss something that's very obvious, that children in particular are often interested in animals like that, you know.
Yeah, I mean, Jolene is absolutely incredible, but her life was saved by social media. Some old lady found her in Sanford, Florida, which is above Orlando, and posted it on Facebook, and it went viral. And I didn't even know about it. Someone brought it to my attention. So once it gets to that level and so many people are watching it, so what does Florida Wildlife Commission have the choice of? Are you going to catch that animal? Are you going to leave it out there and let it die? Or are you going to make yourself a hero and bring it to Gatorland, which is what they did? So, you know, she had a bunch of problems. Even our vets that we have work with us were like, she's not going to make it. And I was like, oh, bullshit. She's going to make it. She's going to be fine. And, like, we've gotten letters from people that wanted to commit suicide or, like, had cancer and had just given up on life. And this little alligator, and she's a firecracker, man. She tries to bite me every day. She's not a kind, gentle one, and I think she's well older than she is, but the connection that she's made with the general public is just incredible. Like, I've never seen anything like it in my life.
Thank you, and by this we conclude the session, but before you run away, just let me ask Sally if you do have any housekeeping notes?
Not actually sure. Matt, any instructions that you know of around this poster session? What's the time? We're running on time? Is it straight away downstairs? Okay, so now we're having the poster session. Okay, cool, no worries. Okay, again, I request that students check your posters and make sure you have an S up the top left corner. If you're a supervisor who is presenting a poster on behalf of a student, can you please do the same? Because I went off the list and I know that I know there's some student names down there that I know from other reasons, but yeah, if everyone can just go through and do that on their own poster. We'll start the poster session. We're then having a group photo. So after the poster session, we'll do a group photo just downstairs and the photographer going over the top like one of our traditional CSG photos, and then we've got a cocktail session after that. If you have any more auction items to drop off for this evening, because, sorry, it's the cocktail and auction night tonight, sorry. So if you have any more auction items, can you please get them downstairs ASAP, because they need to categorise them and do their administrative stuff on it. No idea. So it says on the program Sofitel. I assume it's either in the, it's just downstairs. So it's here, is it? The whole night's here. No, hang on. It's an evolving story. Going out, okay. Okay, so I've been informed by someone more learned than myself is that it is going, there's an area more down towards the pool. I actually don't know the area myself. There's an area there, I'm sure it will be very obvious, but it's here in the hotel. So we go downstairs for, I think it's about an hour and a quarter. If you can look at the posters, interact with the people who are presenting those posters, we'll do the photo and then we'll get on with the auction and cocktail night. Thank you. How does the auction work? Okay, so I believe... No, it's an important question. Okay, so there is a silent auction. There are items downstairs that you can bid on now. So have a look at them, and there's a piece of paper in front of them. Write your name, and you've got to outbid the person before you. Then at the auction night tonight, we have some very charismatic auctioneers. All amounts are in US dollars. And we will have a QR code that if you've got a PayPal account, it links straight to that. Otherwise, you put your credit card details into it. Okay, sorry, one more announcement.